Should you run a Bitcoin Lightning Network node? Well, for the vast majority of people, that answer is no. Alright, so I feel like I should start this off by actually telling you what is the Lightning Network. A lot of people probably already know. If you've been in crypto long enough, you kind of understand. Basically, the Lightning Network is a layer on top of the main, in most cases, Bitcoin transaction layer. So basically, imagine if every time you transact in paper cash, you give this little piece of paper to someone, and then they transact back, all that kind of stuff. And at some point, it becomes a little too inconvenient to move stuff back and forth all the time, especially if you're dealing with like really small amounts or something like that. And so eventually, everyone just takes their whole stack of money and just sticks it in one big pile. Everyone's together and just uses a little other accounting measure to keep track of who has what. So all the money is in the same place the whole time, but if I send you, say, 5 cents worth and we can't make change or whatever, I just write 5 cents on that little piece of paper, and we kind of keep all our balances straight on that second layer, that little piece of paper. And at some point, if someone wants to exit the system, then at that point we're like, all right, well, this person owns this much, this person owns this much, this person owns this much, and then you actually split it in the actual money. So the Lightning Network is not actually Bitcoin. It's another network that keeps track of how much Bitcoin people have. But it's not just an accounting system like that. There are some sort of tie-ins and guarantees with the first layer, which means, for example, if I try to just take my money out of the pot but take everyone's money, it doesn't work out, things like that. I'm just being really basic on this kind of stuff because it's a very complicated and long subject. But basically, the idea is to save on transaction fees and times and space on the main network. You do all your smaller transactions on this other one, and then every once in a while just reconcile on the main chain. So it's kind of a thing on top of it. It's basically a way that people were trying to get Bitcoin to be able to scale to large amounts of transactions to reach everyone without making the main chain, just Bitcoin itself, be able to process more transactions directly on the network for a bunch of different reasons. The Lightning Network is the #1 most touted scaling solution for Bitcoin after the network ended up not pursuing on-chain scaling by making the blocks bigger. Now with fees $10 or more per transaction, it's hard to make small payments without using a second layer solution like Lightning. Now that I told you what the Lightning Network basically is, of course, in the beginning, I'm trying to talk to you about, should you run a full Lightning node? Well, what is even a node? Really simply put, a node is just how you connect to the rest of the network to send and receive payments, right? So if I want to send crypto to anyone, I need to run a node that then sends a transaction, connects to all the other nodes in the network, and just sends a transaction out, and then everyone gets it, and it eventually gets included into the actual blockchain itself. But in order to just send that out there, to just send money to anyone, that has to be done through a node. So that's how it's always done. Now, most people, almost everyone for that matter, who uses any cryptocurrency today does not run their own node. They're using a little phone wallet or something like that that connects to another node, someone else, and that's what sends the transactions out into the network, out into the void. Basically, that means you have to trust someone else to run the services you're using. Of course, you can still hold on to your own money, control your money, without trusting them. But you can't actually send that out anywhere without trusting someone who runs a node. Usually that's not such a big deal, which is why almost no one does it, because just someone else with more time and energy to kind of run infrastructure does it for you, and you can just kind of keep control of your own money and just use it, and it's just not too much of a big deal to trust that little bit to other people. Of course, if you're like a real hardcore cypherpunk type person, you probably want to run your own node and just verify all your own transactions and take no risks, and just, that's what you want to do. Now, an important note that you should keep in the back of your head during the whole rest of this thing: the entire reason there is a Lightning Network that people care about, that's not just a couple people working on it, the entire reason why Bitcoin on-chain is slow and expensive is because at some point, the people in charge of Bitcoin, again, a really complicated topic, so don't roast me for overgeneralizing here. I'm just trying to make sure basic people understand it. The entire reason why Bitcoin works the way it does is because people in charge decided that it's more important for everyone, anyone like you and me, to be able to run their own node, run their own full node themselves, than it is for the network to be able to process a lot of transactions on-chain, just regular, without something like the Lightning Network. And pretty much no one can run a node because it's just expensive to do, and you have to have the right infrastructure and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of the argument for it. So just remember that as we're talking about running a Lightning node or running another node or anything like that, and just think about that. Now, what is really the difference between running a regular cryptocurrency node, say for Bitcoin, or running a Bitcoin Lightning Network node? Well, there's a lot of differences because it's a completely different architecture. It's not at all the same. It's not just like you have the Bitcoin network and then you have a different Bitcoin network on top of it that runs the same, but it's like an extra. No, you have the Bitcoin network, which runs one way, and the Lightning network, which operates in a completely different way on top of that. And so first off, a Lightning node needs a full Bitcoin node. So you have to get both with Lightning. If you just run a regular node, of course, just a regular node, right? In both cases, probably the most annoying part for trying to run something like this at home is you have to download the entire Bitcoin on-chain blockchain. Even if you're running a Lightning node, which is off-chain, you have to download the whole blockchain, which is coming up on 400 gigabytes pretty soon. So that's nothing to sneeze at. And it takes a while for that first sync when you just download everything. So that's kind of the first difference. With Lightning, you need to run 2 nodes. With the regular Bitcoin blockchain, just 1. The second big difference is you need to be online at all times with a Lightning node. Now, of course, with a regular cryptocurrency node of any kind, you need to be online. You need to be connected in order to use it. If I have a full node, I'm trying to send you some money. Of course, I got to be connected to the internet. It's, pretty basic. Difference is, of course, you can receive without being online because it just, anyone sends from one to the other. You can just, as long as you can get your little QR code or your long cryptographic address that, goes in there, you give it to someone else, they can send money to that address all day long. You don't need to be online. It's just when you get online, then you kind of see the whole thing. With the Lightning Network, structurally, you just can't receive money without being online at the time they want to send you the money. So while a regular node, if you're a hobbyist, you don't need to have it on all the time necessarily. With a Lightning node, you will need it running all the time, which means good, stable internet connection. Sometimes you can have a weather storm knock out power for a bit. Sometimes you have to reset your router or something like that, and that's no good. You want to just not have that at all. You want to have it nice, clean, and reliable. With a regular node, you can just start it up and sync it only when you need to send a transaction, unless you're running it for other people and other devices to use. With Lightning, you need to be online at all times in order to receive payments, and going offline for too long can cause you to lose money. The third difference is you need 2 backups. With Lightning, you just need 1 with regular on-chain. Now with a regular node, you just have a backup file. You just save that somewhere secure, and that's what allows you to get your wallet back, get everything working. If something crashes, you need to start the wallet from scratch somewhere else. You just use that wallet file and you keep all your money. Now with the Lightning Network, of course, it's the exact same. You need that wallet backup file as well, because of course it's your both nodes. You need both, right? The difference is with Lightning, you also have to have a separate backup of your channel states, of basically the latest settlement of what was going on between these parties exchanging these IOUs and stuff. And the difference with that, at least currently, I hear there might be some people trying to figure out how to make it just like a permanent backup, kind of like we have with on-chain. But the way it currently works is you need to have the most updated version of this for it to really be good. So that means you need to be constantly updating more and more and more and more and more. And of course, over time, the actual backup file grows in file size, starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And so basically you have a second, much more dynamic backup to keep track of as well. It's not just like, oh, you download a wallet file, put it somewhere, that's fine. And fourth, you need to manage channels and liquidity. Now this is very different from the way the regular Bitcoin network works. The way the regular network works is you have your wallet, you have your public keys, your little address or whatever. People can send you money in there, and then all you have to do to send it somewhere else is just send it to someone else's address, and that's just kind of it. It just goes across. And you don't have to have any special connections with any one person. You just have to know that and send it. You don't have to have a certain amount of money. The only money you have to have is the money you're going to send. And the only money that someone else has to have is the one you're going to receive from them. And so that's it. Now with Lightning, it's a little bit different. I can't send anyone unless I have a connection to them. So I have to actually open up a channel with the person I want to send to. And that allows me to bounce stuff back and forth. And in addition to that, I have to have a certain amount of inbound capacity with whoever I share the channel with in order to even receive money. I can't just say, I have no money, I'm gonna open up a channel. The other person has to have the money for it. And if I don't want to have a direct connection with every single person, which that would just be like using the main network, he just kind of said on-chain. I have to have a connection to you, and you have a connection to someone else, and I have to route my payment through there. And all along the way, there has to be enough liquidity in there to make sure that there's enough money to send money back and forth. It's all a little bit of a complicated process, but basically you have to manage channels, see how many you want open and with whom, and open and close some. You need to manage liquidity in that, like how much money is in this channel between the two of us, for example, or whatever, and just make sure it's all working out very well in order for the whole thing to run smoothly. It's nowhere near as simple as just running a straight up old regular Bitcoin node. You just send the money you have, you can't send the money you don't have, and that's it. You need to pay an on-chain transaction fee in order to open a channel, and depending on how much you have in that channel, that affects how much you can receive, not only send. You will occasionally need to open new channels and manage the liquidity in your channels to make sure sending and receiving happen smoothly, which of course needs on-chain transactions and the money they cost. And finally, you might need some specialized hardware or other infrastructure to make this work really well. So like any node you can run on a computer that is, beefy enough. You have enough hard drive space that, works well enough. You have a good enough internet connection. You can just kind of run that. With Lightning, of course, it's the same basic thing, except the requirements are higher. But because of the way it works and the way it's complicated, it's highly recommended that you use something else, that you use specialized hardware. And in fact, almost any time you look into running your own Lightning node, it'll almost never be like, oh, put it on a computer like this. It's almost always, you need to buy your own Raspberry Pi. That's what you really need to do. Everyone recommends you do it on a dedicated Raspberry Pi, a small DIY bare bones computer. This avoids having a lot of technical issues when setting up the node. With all the required hardware though, this whole setup will cost a few $100s. This is a lot cheaper than buying a new computer, but compared to using an old laptop, it's not insignificant. Alright, so you might see behind me there, that's my little spare laptop there that I'm trying to run a Lightning node on. I've been trying for a very long time. I think I'm pretty close, but basically there's a million different implementations and ways of running a Lightning node, and I've sort of dug through almost all of them and tried them, and there have been errors and mistakes and things like that. And finally the thing I got on now is a very all out of the box, just works kind of solution called Umbrel, which, is a pretty great product. It's worked pretty well, except first off, in order to start that, I had to install a bunch of different dependencies on my computer to make sure it really worked. And then, of course, I had to install Umbrel and then run it. And I ran into a bunch of problems where just getting errors, it wouldn't work. And I had to close manually a whole bunch of connection ports on my computer with manually kill the processes in the command line. And then I have to, try it again a bunch of times. And then I finally got it working. But at that point, there was some sort of a bug in the software and it just was stuck not loading. So then I had to find a way to basically get it back online and then patch the software so it didn't have that bug. And so basically it's been months since I started this journey. And it's been a few weeks since I started trying to use Umbrel, and I've been going back and forth with support. I finally got it online, which is great. It's just not showing up yet in basically the node directory, and I'm not able to actually receive any payments right now. And we'll see if that changes. If that changes, I'll definitely let you know and kind of give a more dedicated video to just how do you run a Lightning node. But basically, yeah, it's been very time consuming and difficult for me, and it's taken a long time. And I've run quite a few different cryptocurrency nodes over the years, but they've all been regular old on-chain nodes. And so that's pretty easy to do. This is something completely different. I would not think that most non-technical people could be able to figure this out unless, they get lucky. Or, again, buy the specialized hardware. Go for that. So if you've been listening to this whole thing thinking, oh, I just want to use money, just digital money, and it should be pretty easy, like using a bank account or something like that, and you're listening to all this stuff about, running a node, And of course, it's nightmarishly difficult on the Lightning side compared to the regular side. But even the regular side is like, why do I have to download this special thing that I need to have on during certain times and download this whole blockchain? And like, why do I need to do all this? Short answer is you don't. On either side too, a regular cryptocurrency wallet of any kind and a Lightning wallet, you can, in both cases, although it's a little bit more tricky depending on which one you want to use for Lightning, but in both cases, you can just run a very simple phone app that you can just send and receive easily. You don't have to worry about it. You just back it up, write down your backups or whatever, and just have an internet connection and start going, just sending and receiving. And of course, that's a little bit of a simpler experience on the regular side, but on the Lightning side, it's a much simpler experience. Just the amount of, you don't have to worry about balancing channels. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. You just can receive to an empty wallet in a lot of cases and can send to someone else. And it's still a little tricky. There's still some bugs here and there and things you have to figure out, but for the most part, that's kind of how it works. So there's just no reason you'd want to run your own node if you can just do it this way. Now, the entire reason of all cryptocurrency is it's supposed to be permissionless. You should be able to use it and no one should stop you. No one can cancel you. You don't have to rely on anyone for this. And of course, that's when you run your own node and, like, to a different extent, run your own mining hardware and all this stuff. That's a little bit more out there. That's kind of the way it is there. When you're using a light wallet, when you're using just a basic phone app type thing, you're trusting someone else to run part of that infrastructure. You're trusting someone else to send your money for you and connect to the rest of the network on your behalf. This is only a problem if, first off, no one wants to do the job, which is unlikely these days, but also it's a problem if whoever's running the node that you rely on decides to go rogue or gets shut down or decides to mess with you in some way, in which case you really should look into running your own node, right? Now, it's important to note that with a regular crypto light wallet, you trust someone to just run a node and broadcast your transactions for you. It's pretty simple. When you use a light wallet for Lightning, you heavily trust not just someone running a node, but it's a Lightning service provider or LSP, and they do a whole lot more you trust them to do than just the simple transaction broadcast kind of thing on the regular side. You trust them to provide inbound liquidity into a channel so people can send you money if you don't already have some. You trust them to open channels to other people. You trust them to route your payments. You trust them to do a lot of things for you that isn't just like a simple node. And the better the experience, the worse this sort of gets. Of course, the best Lightning wallet out there, in my humble opinion, at least from user experience perspective, is Phoenix, which basically lets you hold your own keys, keep your own control over your own funds, but they do everything else for you. You have to connect to their node. They have to open up channels for you, which means sending on-chain transactions to open these things. They close them for you. They provide the liquidity in there for you. They do all this kind of stuff, which not only makes you a lot more reliant on them, but also incurs a lot of cost on their side. So they have to run it more like a business, where you can, as a regular company, just decide to run a always-on node of any kind, and it doesn't really matter. Just some infrastructure you have up there, or if you're a hobbyist, it's easy to do. If you want to process transactions as a Lightning node, though, at that point, you become infrastructure to a much higher level. It's a lot more expensive. You have to have money lying around to provide liquidity for the channels you open. You have to spend money every time you open a channel for someone. And it becomes a lot more of a, I would say, relationship like your financial services provider. It becomes a lot more like that, except you just don't have to trust them with holding your money. Without a regular node, you can't send transactions, and you can't see what you've received unless you look it up in a block explorer. Without a Lightning node, however, you can't send or receive. With a regular on-chain wallet, depending on which one, you can just connect to a different node and start using again, which could take as little as a few minutes. With Lightning, depending on the particular wallet setup you have, you may have to close multiple channels and reopen them, which can cost a lot of money and take weeks, depending on how much you want to pay in fees. Of course, you can just run your own node from the start and point the phone wallet to it, but as I already went over, it's significantly more difficult, expensive, and time-consuming to run a Lightning node, and it needs to be on all the time, not just when you're using it. So did that clear anything up for anyone? I really hope it did. It's a complicated subject. It kind of gets into the heart of crypto, which is, I'm trying to make it very simple for you guys. But if you wanted just a brief summary, should you run your own node? Probably not. you're probably fine just doing your own thing. It's okay with the little bit of trust you have to give in other people and other services to run nodes for you, except when you're running Lightning, in which case you have to trust people a whole lot more than regular, and it's a lot harder for you to just do it yourself. So hope this clears some things up on the Lightning Network. I will have some extra videos out as I continue down this crazy, complicated rabbit hole. And basically you hear stuff all over the place, but oh, Lightning is just amazing, it works so great, or oh, Lightning's terrible, it's just like it's never gonna work out. And I prefer to do it myself so I can tell it to you myself, and then there's no confusion, there's no there's no mysteries, and trust. Again, I'm being the node running things for you, and so you can see what it's like. But of course, don't take my word for it, run it yourself, and then let's have a conversation about it.